share the agenda on the screen?
Sorry guys, hold on.
Is it working?
Yeah, it's at the blueprint. Could you just scroll up to the first page on the agenda? There we go. Okay. All right. Well, welcome to the special council meeting for Wednesday, May the 13th. In consideration of the current COVID-19 provincial and public health orders prohibiting public gatherings of more than 5 people, as well as the requirements for physical distancing between persons, in-person attendance at this special council meeting will not be permitted. Members of the public can access a copy of the agenda as well as draft minutes from the Town of Shelburne website or watch the council meeting video from the town's YouTube channel. Correspondence related to the agenda business may be submitted via email to the clerk at jwilloughby@shelburne.ca, and this document can also be made available in other accessible formats and with communication supports as soon as practicable and upon request. So with that, I will officially call the meeting to order and ask the clerk to do a quick roll call of council members.
Okay, when I call your name, please indicate present. Mayor Mills.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Anderson.
Present.
Councillor Bernardo.
Present.
Councillor Buffett.
Present. Excuse me.
Councillor Fegan is absent. Councillor Hall is absent. And Councillor Wegner.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay.
We have quorum.
Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? No, seeing none, we'll move on to the agenda item, which is the review of the COVID-19 blueprint for recovery. The draft is in the agenda package, and I think Denise is going to start that off.
Yes, thank you. Through the mayor, in consultation with the mayor and senior staff, as we were working towards an eventual reopening of our office, as well as how we will manage all of our services going forward during COVID-19 and post-COVID-19. This blueprint was developed as a high policy or profile document to provide the community on behalf of council with an overview of how the administration, operations, and the services of the town would be looked at. We think it's fundamentally and important strategically to do this and to provide council with an overview of how the community will respond to some of the changes that are obviously going to be inherent as we move forward. So as our mayor has done a significant, if not exclusive, heavy lifting on this project and provided the leadership with the development of the document, I'm going to turn it over to him to outline some of the strategies that he's put in place for us, as well as then I can follow up after on how this will be moved forward at the first meeting on May the 25th with some of the implementation plans.
Thank you. So basically, as Denise said, I mean, the blueprint that's included in the agenda package, really is designed to be, a high level policy document. So, as Denise mentioned, there will be a lot of substantive elements added to this and backfilling this to support it over time. And those will come through obviously in the form of staff recommendations and staff reports over the course of the next couple of meetings. But I felt it was important that, kind of as an extension of our strategic plan, that the council formally adopt, some sort of vision with respect to our efforts for moving forward into the recovery phase of this, to demonstrate to the public the sorts of things from a policy perspective that we're going to be looking at, as we start to work our way out of the current crisis. So hopefully everybody's had a chance to look at it. I mean, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time going through page by page, but In essence, there are sort of 4 guiding principles that I've identified, which I think are, the sorts of things that we should be keeping in mind as we work our way through this recovery. So, number 1 is that we keep the health and safety of our public and our staff top of mind, that we ensure that we're being transparent and equitable in our decisions going forward, that the decisions we make are rooted in scientific and fact-based data. So, let's try to make the best decisions we can based on the actual data that we have available. And then finally, I do think that, even in the midst of a crisis like this, I think there's an opportunity that's created for us to actually emerge from this thing in an even better position than where we were as a community going into it. So, the idea that we should try to capitalize to whatever extent possible on this to move forward in a stronger position than we were when we started. So in terms of the 3 pillars or 3 prongs that we're looking at for this recovery effort, characterize it as restart, realign, and reassess. So just very quickly in terms of the restart, obviously I think the first step is just starting to physically reopen things. And how do we do that in a safe and responsible way? So number 1, looking at the slow and gradual reopening of our public facilities and amenities, and making sure that those are in line with the provincial and public health directives that we're getting. But I also indicated there that I think it's important that we kind of reserve the right to look at local needs and local realities when we're making those decisions. So, for example, if the province said parks can open as of a certain date, if we feel as though we're not yet in a position where we can do that safely, then, we still have that latitude on a local level to look at the realities that we're facing and pick dates that make sense for us. The second part of that is obviously continuing to provide the support for our local businesses and community groups that we've been trying to offer throughout this process. But I think, to a large extent, some of these groups and businesses are going to need our support more through the reopening transition than they may have needed even in the midst of the public health crisis. And then finally, looking at ways to implement new protocols for public safety as things start to reopen, on a very practical level, that's going to involve things like, protocols to ensure social distancing at town hall once we reopen, as well as, additional sanitation measures and whatnot at parks and public spaces that we'll likely have to look at in order to make sure that the public's protected and safe and healthy once we reopen. So then flipping on to the realign segment. So the point here, I think, and it sort of speaks to my earlier comments about, being presented with an opportunity to sort of emerge from this in an even better position. I don't think it's any secret that any of us looking into the future right now are probably, pretty confident in the assessment that, the old way of doing things is probably not going to cut it anymore. And, unfortunately, a lot of the assumptions and whatnot that we've used to develop our long-term planning, just quite frankly, may not be the proper assumptions going forward. So I think we have both an opportunity, but also a responsibility to take a close look at sort of all segments of operations to make sure that things are properly aligned to deal with the new realities. So that means, looking at our strategic plan, again, with fresh eyes and through the lens of what this new world is going to look like post-COVID, to make sure that the strategies and priorities that we identified still make sense. We need to look at staffing, I think, and that's something that was identified in our strategic plan through the service delivery review. But I think it becomes even more pertinent now to take a close look at that and make sure that the staffing we have in place is what we need going forward. Obviously, looking at our budget, I've talked to Carrie at some length, and if she wants to add something, by all means, but she's not suggesting that we reopen the 2020 budget that we've approved. But within that budget framework, we may have to look realistically at moving some things around just to deal with the new realities. And then again, going forward, for the next couple of years at least, I think the assumptions and the estimates that we had based our next couple of years budgets on may not cut the muster at this point. And then finally, again, this was identified in our strat plan, but looking at our governance models and structures going forward to make sure that the way things have been operating are going to continue to serve us well into the future, and making whatever adjustments we have to those models so that we're responsive going ahead. And then finally, the reassess elements. This essentially is just a nod to the fact that going forward, I think it's entirely appropriate to expect that information and conditions are going to change fairly quickly, and what I don't want to see us do is lock into a certain set of plans or priorities and be inflexible to the point that if things are changing and those aren't working any longer, that we can't backtrack and devise something new. So I think, a constant kind of reassessment of where we're at going forward, at least for the next foreseeable future, is going to be needed. So what I've suggested there is, for the time being, at least a continuation of the emergency operation style reporting structure. So as it works right now, our emergency control group, which consists of senior staff, myself, the police chief, and the fire chief, we're meeting every other day for the most part. But I think going forward, even once we emerge from the local declaration of emergency, having those sorts of calls probably on a weekly basis makes sense, so that we can track things and make any minor adjustments that need to be made, and then bring those back to council. The second element to that is development of a response plan. Most of the experts are indicating that we can likely expect to see future waves of COVID-19, potentially another wave coming in the fall that might be hitting even harder than this first wave. So I think it only makes sense to put some plans in place before that happens, so that we're ready to respond to that quickly. And then finally, just sort of a way of tracking all of the services on a monthly basis. So what I've suggested there is just the form of a monthly report card on all of the services being offered within town, and to kind of do monthly checkups so that we can tinker with that and make any adjustments that are necessary going forward. So in a nutshell, that is about it. As I said, this isn't meant to be a prescriptive, detailed document. It's basically just intended to provide some high-level policy direction to staff, so that they can start working on their recommendations to backfill this and provide the substance that we're going to need going forward. So I'll open it up for discussion. Anybody have any thoughts or questions or concerns?
Will we have any communication with the public, like having them provide us with their ideas in such a way that they're part of the whole situation instead of just us doing everything? Because I think it would be important for them to feel like they have their comments heard.
Yeah, and I think going forward, that'll be one of the important pieces in dealing with the public engagement portion, and I think we can probably use the Bang the Table app for that. At this stage, I think we're still sort of in that transition phase between crisis to post-crisis management. So I think trying to streamline that stuff at this point is important. But as things start to open up, definitely, I think the public engagement part will play an important role, especially in that reassessment phase. Like if the track we're on isn't working, then let us know.
Yeah. All right.
Steve?
The realignment part, Wade, that's going to require some meetings, like to look at all of the strat plan, the budget, and all those kinds of things. So we're going to have some additional meetings, I'm gathering, to go through all of that. Correct? My thought process.
Yeah, I mean, whether they'll come in the form of additional standalone meetings, or we'll just incorporate them into future council meetings. But you're right. Yeah, I mean, we're going to have to go through that stuff and take a look. Probably set one meeting aside to deal with the strat plan, one to deal with budget. I think in terms of the staffing, you know, my thought would be that we'll kind of let staff take the lead on pursuing the service delivery review as we had planned, but it'll probably expedite that process.
It's the governance model that sort of has me a little worried. Other than that, the rest of it I'm kind of okay with. But the governance models is the one that I think there's going to be some discussion there, I gather.
And I think, you know, particularly so with some of the recent news, but yeah, I mean, we'll definitely have to look at that going forward. But, you know, as I said, that's one of the things that we identified in the strat plan to begin with. But, you know, given the situation we're in now, I think it becomes even more timely.
After today's meeting, I would say it's very important that we might jump on that sooner than later. There are some issues that the rest of the municipalities are concerned about it, particularly the fact that we have not signed on to the new agreement.
Just on that point, Walter, for the benefit of everybody else, do you just want to give a quick update on the fire board meeting from today?
As much as I can. We did have an in-camera session, and Tilsonburg's already released the fact publicly. The fire chief has resigned, and we will be probably having to go out and get a new fire chief. Like I said, at the board meeting, there were questions regarding the agreement. We haven't signed on. Some of the municipalities are not necessarily agreeing with what we want. So that is something that we at council are going to have to do. I said that we were working on it, but COVID-19 just tossed it to a side on us. It wasn't something that, you know, we weren't going to work on. Other than that, basically the fire department, everything has been fairly quiet, and the call volume is down as well as the census. So that's the quick synopsis of today's meeting.
Okay.
But the biggest part is the fire chief. That is going to be an issue for us.
Yeah. Steve, did you have a comment? You're muted.
You're muted. Turn your mic on, Steve.
There we go.
I do have a comment, but I guess the biggest question is why has the fire chief resigned? But I guess maybe at some point, Walter, when you're able, you'll provide some additional information on that. That's pretty shocking. Is that so? Are you in a position to comment on that, or is that something that has to wait until later?
No, I can give you it quickly. It was two reasons for his resignation: family and health. The family part is he's got parents that are 80 years old and live down in nearby Tilsonburg. Elmer, I believe, it's down towards that area. He has two children that are attending university in London. Again, that's another reason for him moving down. Plus, he had a heart attack last year. There's a lot of stress as being a fire chief. The position he took is not for more pay. He's not getting any more pay or no more benefits. It's just less stress on him than what he would be having currently. So he's trying to look after his health as well. So those were the main reasons for the resignation. He really didn't want to leave Shelburne. He likes it. He liked working with the fire board. He was really almost in tears when he had to tell the board that he had resigned, because he really enjoyed it up here. But again, he has reasons, personal, that he felt that he needed to do what he had to do.
Okay, just a quick comment. I know Denise is waiting there as well, so I'll be brief. One of the things that you talked about, Wade, during the presentation is about this new normal and the expectation of going back to the way things used to be. It's probably not a reality. And one of the things that sort of come to the forefront of my mind, and I know that we're probably going to discuss this at some point, is council chambers. To me, that is not part of the new reality going forward. Well, going back to that is not sort of part of the new reality, I should say. And I don't see how we could affect social distancing in that room under the best of circumstances. When you look at the gallery for the public and the media, how close we are with respect to each other around council table. And so as we talk about strat plan and maybe reopening the budget or not reopening the budget, is that something that we're going to be discussing fairly soon, considering that there is going to be a reopening coming down the road at some point?
Yeah, I'll let Denise handle that, because I think that's sort of part and parcel of what's going to be involved in her first staff report coming forward. So Denise.
Through the mayor, on the 25th of May, Deputy Mayor Anderson, that exactly will be addressed. We've already put in place the options that are available to us, and being in the council chambers is obviously not one of them. When introduce in-person meetings, I think I had referenced this in an email regarding the tentative plan of the OPP, whether they were going to be electronic or not. So currently, only option will be go to the CDRC upstairs. Based on a 4-hour rental, it's $179 plus tax. So we don't want to spill over 4 hours. We'll also be looking at all of the space within our offices and realigning that space to ensure social distancing. And I'll be addressing the most of the tactical at a very high level in the report on the 25th of May, based on a reopening plan. And that will incorporate council meetings, whether they're going to continue to be virtual, then it's a non-issue for now. But if they're going to be in person, there certainly are going to be significant restrictions in not only the way council itself operates, but how the public will be engaged within the room, and the protocols will need to put in place.
And just briefly, Denise, on that, if I may, Wade, is for those, I'm sort of thinking about Twitter, for example, where they said, look, they're opening their offices, but for those who want to sort of remain at home, they can until maybe there's a vaccine that's out there. So let's say that the offices are reopened, but some of the members around the table don't feel comfortable actually attending the meetings, despite best efforts with respect to the social distancing. Are we contemplating how that may be handled, or that will be part of the discussion on May? So I don't want to sort of jumpstart that discussion, but is that part of the equation as well?
Okay, so on the legislative side of what constitutes meeting performance, I'm going to let Jennifer deal with that more. So I'm going to be dealing more with the staffing and whether accommodations, those are all HR policies on how we manage that. But I don't think, other than the emergency order, which provided virtual meeting provisions and electronic, that would be ported back to regular meeting requirements, where electronic participation currently is not allowable.
Okay, thanks.
Jennifer, do you want to?
I could just give a quick clarification that the Municipal Act does permit council members to participate electronically. However, you do not count as quorum once the emergency declaration has been lifted. So that we at least have to have 4 members in a room to count as quorum in order to continue some type of a virtual process once the emergency declaration has been lifted. If you are participating virtually, you're not permitted to participate in closed session either. So
You can't vote either, can you?
you can vote, you just don't count as quorum.
How can you vote if you're not quorum?
That's a good question, but that's what the Municipal Act says. You can participate virtually, you can vote, but you don't count as quorum.
That's kind of defeatist.
Yeah.
I can resend my report from 2017, I think it was, Bill 68,
Yeah,
if you wanted to reread that.
I'd want to make sure that if I'm going to be not counted as quorum and vote, they'd find out that my vote wasn't really a vote either.
I'll resend that report to everyone.
Excellent. Just to make double sure.
Yeah.
Denise?
Sorry, I had my hand up before for another purpose. So through the mayor, I just wanted to remind council that through the county's SDR process, which has somewhat been put on hold, there was a comprehensive component, which was the shared services review, which involved the lower tiers. Two areas of service that were identified within that scope of review were recreation, which is a governance model, as well as fire service, which is the other governance model that a number of municipalities are involved with. So there will be information, not sure when, obviously coming out of that report. The timelines have been adjusted. I believe there's also an update report on County Council tomorrow from their CAO, but certainly there's still some great work that's been done to date with respect to governance models, which we certainly have participated in and can build upon going forward.
Okay. Lindsay, any comments?
I guess for me, it was just during the presentation where we sort of discussed the fact that if the province opens the parks, that we can sort of reassess our level of opening up parks. I guess my only issue with that is I know we've discussed before how municipalities don't necessarily or cannot necessarily overwrite a provincial legislation. So my question to that would sort of be like, if the province is saying we can open up our parks, how then can we make the decision to not open our parks?
Yeah, I mean, that was only offered as one example. That, you know, we'll look at provincial directives, we'll look at public health directives, but I think it's important that we also look at, you know, the facts on the ground locally. But, you know, just as we can set a local bylaw restricting hours of park, you know, availability here, there are parklands. So the ultimate decision on that is up to us. I mean, what the Premier did earlier was to sort of provide a blanket order across the province that all parks are closed for outdoor recreation activities. And once that's lifted, then, you know, anytime after that, we can lift ours. But, you know, I'm just offering that as an example to say, you know, that's one area where, you know, local realities might dictate a different decision or at least consideration of that.
If I can sort of go back, Lindsay's question was, even if we do open up our parks, like say we open up the soccer fields, we don't necessarily have to open up the play equipment because maybe that is not as safe.
Exactly. Yeah. So that the whole point there is, you know, that we can look again at sort of the local facts on the ground and tailor those decisions in a way that makes sense for Shelburne. As opposed to sort of a one size fits all provincial directive.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I was sort of thinking that as well, that, you know, we could sort of defer back to where you could attend the parks, you know, have a picnic in the park, that sort of thing, as long as you're social distancing, but yet the equipment itself could potentially still be closed, you know, just because of that safety aspect there too. So that makes sense.
You know, like keep in mind that, you know, we decided to close the playground equipment before that became a provincial order as well. So, you know, as we start to reopen, I think we should keep the same amount of flexibility, you know, for ourselves in making those decisions to reopen. Carrie or Jennifer or Jim, any thoughts from you guys?
Just with respect to the budget, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
I think I have mentioned before that I don't recommend reopening it. We are one of the fortunate municipalities who did have the budget adopted prior to COVID-19. And I know there are a lot of municipalities struggling to get their budget passed in time. And the reason that it is a time constraint is that we have to enter our tax rates into Opta, which is the tax billing system that figures out capping reports for us. And for us to delay that means that it would delay the tax billing for all municipalities within the county. So we are hoping that council will adopt the tax rate bylaw next Monday night, or 2 weeks, Monday, sorry, so that we can proceed with the regular schedule for the tax billing process. And the other thing too, we were fortunate enough to have is that we do have those extra levies incorporated into the budget framework for 2020. And I know that if required, there is the opportunity to realign those additional levies.
So as you and I talked about last week, like even though it's your recommendation not to reopen the budget and we still go ahead with setting the tax rates, you know, there is some flexibility, as you just mentioned, to realign things within that approved budget. So as long as we're not changing the bottom line, you know, such that it will have an effect on the tax rates, you know, we still have an opportunity to move things around if needed, to deal with, you know, anything that may come up kind of COVID related. Is that appropriate?
Yes.
Okay. Jennifer, anything?
I can just add one more thing, that there are municipalities petitioning the province to maintain this type of virtual meeting process. There were communications listed in the May 11th communications agenda from municipalities. So this is a preferred method from what I've seen so far for some municipalities. So all we can do is hope that perhaps the province revisits the Municipal Act to allow this type of virtual meeting process to maintain and take place.
Denise?
Gotta learn. So I can't remember, I'm sorry, there's just so much information. I did at the last meeting give an update on the OPP, and since the meeting have gotten confirmation that they would consider doing the costing proposal electronically. So there is a potential that would be coordinated and delivered in June. It would just be what kind of format, and we'll certainly, as soon as we know what we could do with that, whether or not the public engagement and the Q&A that we committed to, which would be within a week or 2 weeks after their costing presentation to council, would also be an electronic format, would certainly be something we need to review. But certainly if electronic presentations are going to be, as Jennifer said, maybe the way that business will be conducted for months to come, we don't want to delay the OPP making that costing proposal until we can actually have in-person meetings.
Could you put the screen back up, Jennifer, just with the resolution there? All right, so the resolution reads, be it resolved that council adopts the COVID-19 blueprint for recovery as presented. Do I have a mover and seconder for that?
I'll move it.
Moved
I'll
by
second.
Councilor Donato, seconded by, was that Councilor Buffett?
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's carried. Confirming bylaw, be it resolved that leave be given for the reading and enacting a bylaw number 24-2020, being a bylaw to confirm certain proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Shelburne for its special council meeting held May 13th, 2020. Mover and seconder for that one.
I'll move it.
Councilor Donato. Seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. And finally, be it resolved that we now adjourn to meet at the call of the mayor. Moved by Councilor Wagner. Seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. All right. Thanks, guys.
Take care, everyone.
Yeah, we'll see you.
All right. Good evening.
Good evening.
There.